Hey, it's Ben, and I am back for day two of teaching myself to play the harmonica. And yesterday we worked on the major scale, and no matter how long you've been playing an instrument, that is always a good way to warm up and get ready to start playing. Um, and again, we'll talk more about that later, why we always learn the major scale first and keep coming back to it even once you've got your instrument down. So I'm going to go ahead and warm up here exactly the way I finished yesterday, playing a C major scale on my C harmonica. And you'll notice today that I did it back down as well as up. It's important to practice your scales and patterns descending as well as ascending because they feel different. And a lot of learning to play an instrument is muscle memory. You'll also notice that I'm still trying to figure out the spacing of the holes and to get them just right. I'm still not hitting them exactly and getting some of the neighboring tones. So I assume that that's something that will change as I get better at the instrument. You may also notice that I'm in the kitchen tonight, which is because it got a little bit late. I hadn't practiced yet today, and my daughter is down for bed now. So I am kicked out of my office. I am practicing here in the kitchen. And I probably would have just skipped today, but this has become a really good way to reinforce my practice habit and make sure that I get it done no matter what. So let's try that C major scale again. Wait, I'm having trouble with it again. All right, work in progress. But I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about notation today. Um, so here's how this book is notated. And I want to be careful not to violate any copyright, so I'm not going to be showing too much of the book as we go through this process, but you'll see it's notated in two different ways. So this is standard notation. This is treble clef, the notes in treble clef. And underneath it, you'll see numbers, which are the number of the hole, and then an arrow that either tells you to blow out or draw in. So this is essentially the harmonica version of tablature. If you played guitar or any similar fretted string instrument, you're familiar with tablature. You've seen it before. It's just another way of writing out notes that doesn't rely on standard notation. Now, I'm normally not a big fan of using tablature when you first start out. It can be useful later on. Tablature certainly has its place, as does piano roll, but it's actually not as efficient at delivering musical information as standard notation. The best language to learn music in is standard notation. Actually, Adam Neely has a great video on this that I may link at some point later on. But when you're first starting out with an instrument, I generally recommend that people start by learning standard notation and only learn other forms of notation after they've mastered that. So I really dislike beginner books that have tablature alongside standard notation because it tends to become a crutch, even for me. Even if I'm trying not to look at the tablature, the tab is always the quickest cheat sheet, and so it's really, really difficult to not look at tablature when it's there. In this case, on the harmonica, I still kind of feel that way, that relying on this particular notation of the numbers and the arrows potentially causes you not to learn standard notation as fast for the instrument, which is potentially a problem. Although the more I'm thinking about this harmonica, the more I kind of feel like standard notation is also not the right answer here when you're first starting out. And I'll tell you what I mean. So this book is written for C harp, right? On here somewhere. Yeah, it says for C harp, right? So the notes that are written here are the ones that correspond to the notes on this particular harmonica. So getting used to this camera, sorry. On this particular harmonica. So it's written out for those particular notes. And there's nothing wrong with it, right? Those are actually the notes you're playing. But this instrument is limited because this instrument can only play diatonically in the key of C. Now later on in this process, we'll talk about using harmonicas that are keyed in one key to do things in other keys, because there is a time to do that. But the notes that are on this instrument are the notes that are diatonic to the key of C major, and that's what this book is written as. It's written with the diatonic notes for C major, so that leaves out these other 6 harmonicas that I bought, and is also going to limit the way you play in other keys. So when you learn to read standard notation for harmonica, you are learning how to play the harmonica in one key, not how to play the harmonica in all keys. Now there are other ways of notating music which might be more useful for the harmonica. Rather than using standard notation, I am going to try to focus on intervals when I'm playing the harmonica, which is to say, not on the specific note itself that I'm playing, but on that note's relation to the key, which will be the same across all of the harmonicas. So when I'm playing C, it is more useful, ultimately, to think of that as 1, right? Because in the key of C, the note C is the first note. That will also be true if I am playing in the key of G or in the key of A, right? In the key of G, your G will be 1, and in the key of A, your A will be 1. And so in that sense, the harmonicas are all actually laid out exactly the same way. And learning one is the same as learning the others. So in some ways, I feel like this book is written, is notated in 2 ways that are maybe counterproductive. I mean, I already read treble clef, so it's actually something of an advantage for when you're picking up a second instrument or a third instrument or whatever. If you already read standard notation, this is one of the great advantages of it. You sort of already have a leg up because all you have to learn is how to relate that notation to the physical forms of your instrument. But in this case, I kind of feel like standard notation is almost as counterproductive as tab. So this is just one of the things I've been thinking about as I am starting to play this instrument, is how should I visualize and organize the musical concepts in my head, and does this program coincide with those, right? Is this a good way of organizing my thoughts about the instrument I'm playing? Because ultimately that's going to dictate what you can do with the instrument. And I am out of time once again. It's been 10 minutes, and I'm trying to hold myself to that. So I'm just going to do one more thing. I'm going to play through that C major scale one more time. Repetition makes things more automatic. All right, I'm going to call it there. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching.